everyone. So, as you gathered up top, we are trying to make the ultimate 5-day Greek road trip, and Sean and I actually had a stab at this last October. I'm here with Sean.
Hello.
And I feel like we did a reasonable job.
Yeah, I think we did it. I am heavily biased, but I mean, I can't imagine what we've left out that.
Well, you say that,
but this is speaking from ignorance. I mean, I don't know the full menu of Greek sites worth visiting.
Well, the problem is we're on the internet. The internet loves nothing more than top 10s, and then to argue about those top 10s ad infinitum. Just forever. Just arguing about everything forever. So no matter what you do, even if we include some like diamond encrusted ponies, there'll be someone in the comments who's like, actually you should have gone for the platinum encrusted ponies, idiots. So you just can't really do anything right, but we'll muddle through nonetheless. And I say, we had a great trip. I'm also going to be, just disclaimer here, you'll see as we go, I'm going to be pulling in some footage in a few places we visited from other trips as well, as we kind of discussed. There's so much prefacing we need to do up top, just to sort of explain a few things and just kind of try and deflect a few obvious bad faith criticisms.
What bad faith criticisms do you suspect might come your way?
I mean, the main one is probably like, oh, why are you doing 5 days? Oh, why not 7 days? Why not 10 days? Like, I don't know, wise Socrates! Why don't you do the episode then?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to pick a single number at some point. And then you could always ask the legitimate question, why not another number?
Yeah, and look, this is what we ended up with. I think we ended up with 5 days just because of how that was where the cheapest flights ended up landing. That's normally what dictates these trips.
Yep.
So, it's a reasonable bit to sort of cram it in. Let's get this out of the way because this is one of the really obvious things. We are not covering the Greek islands in this episode. We are doing this on the mainland, and that is not because there's nothing to see in the islands. It's the exact opposite. The islands are far too good. You cannot possibly, take 5 days and think I'm just so many times.
Yeah.
I'm on some Facebook groups which are kind of to do with Greek islands and Greek whatever, and you get people messaging like, hey, so we really wanted to see Santorini and Athens. We also want to go to Crete and we want to see Delos and we hope we make Corfu. And we've got 4 days. Can anyone make any recommendations? And everyone's like, So look, we have literally just done 4 episodes on Crete. We spent 10 days exploring that. You need at least 7 days on Crete.
It reminds me of the equivalent of kind of those student trips to see kind of, Eastern Asia, and they spend 3 days per country or something. You think, you've not seen anything.
Greece has so much to do, so we're not ruining the islands by trying to rush them too much. Those are a whole other set of trips. Do them justice. That's not being included in this episode. This will be in a playlist though, so we've already done a whole series on the Ionian Islands. Those are generally the episodes where everyone gets really mad at me for apparently not loving them enough. I'm showing all these gorgeous white sand beaches and everything, and it was like, why do you hate Kefalonia? It's like, I don't. Why do you assume that I do?
That's a strange thing to hear because if you know Dave, he just lives for Greek islands and history of the Greeks and the Phoenicians and
I don't know if this is maybe from either non-native English speakers or maybe just Americans or just anyone who doesn't understand just a little degree of sarcasm. They just interpret it as pure hatred. What? This guy hates my favourite Greek island. Let's get him! I don't know what to tell you, man. Look, they're in the playlist. Look, we love Kefalonia. It's amazing. Sean, you were there really recently. You can confirm it is amazing.
I went for a wedding, and it is just stunningly beautiful. Mountains and forests everywhere. It's stunning.
Yeah.
And blue waters.
So yes. I have to keep saying this. Yes, Kefalonia is absolutely as amazing as you've been told. But we're not doing that this episode. So let's... the funny thing about recording this now as well, we have just come back from a 7-day road trip of essentially Western Turkey, kind of the Aegean coast, where we saw Troy.
Yes.
We went to Ephesus. We saw 2 of the 7 wonders of the ancient world.
Oh, it's amazing.
We caught 5 out of the sort of 7 churches name dropped in the book of Revelation.
I mean, I'm having to try real hard to not get my memories mixed up.
Yeah, that's the problem. the stuff they have out there is just astonishing. In fact, I'm just looking at the time. It's about 5 minutes in. Normally, the angriest commenters have already clicked away after 30 seconds, so I can risk poking my head above the parapet. But it would be the ultimate, like, kicking the hornet's nest if the twist was like, yeah, the ultimate Greek history road trip is by visiting Turkey.
Oh, there's a case to be made.
Yeah, that's the thing. And the problem here really is that do I have to really outline this, that in antiquity pretty much the entirety of the Aegean had large sort of Greek-speaking populations, and the boundaries of the modern sort of Greek and Turkish states are very recent things, really just as a fallout of World War I. A lot of tragedies kind of came off the back of that, but for thousands of years there were still Greek-speaking communities all along that sort of western Turkish coast. There's so many amazingly preserved ancient sort of Greek and Roman sites that we saw, because all of the sort of main Greek settlements, the Romans then came in and added loads. They were massive Hellenophiles, and so they just loved everything, and they all put their own stuff. So it really blurs the line between what's like ancient Greece, like pre-Romans, and what's Romans. It's all just kind of baked on top of itself now.
Yeah.
But
It's astounding. It makes me just really perplexed as to how they are so well preserved.
It is
It's baffling somehow. That time just doesn't seem to touch, certain carvings of marble, and it's exquisite.
yeah, and look, anyway, so this is not that episode. That episode is going to have to wait, I don't know, it's like a couple of years at this point, based on the backlog we've got to get through. But yeah, like, but if we actually did that in this episode, you'd be like, can you smell burning? Oh my goodness! The comments section has been set on fire by all the nationalists. Well, this has turned into a massive digression, and we still haven't got started, so we should probably get on with the actual Greek road trip. And I've got to say this up top. We're talking about Greek history, and be honest, as soon as you say Greek history, you are picturing columns.
Yes.
You are
Doric,
picturing
Ionic,
the
Corinthian.
Yeah, you're picturing all the capitals, Doric, Ionic, or Corinthian. That's what everyone pictures when you think of Greece. But what they're really talking about there is classical era Greece, and that's actually a very specific time window. You say ancient Greece, that can cover anything up to about 2,000 years.
Yeah,
but
indeed.
classical era Greece is really from about, ballpark, don't at me, about 500 BC for maybe 150 years. It's all the greatest hits that we teach in our primary schools. It's the ascent of Athens and then the Delian League. You've got Socrates, Aristotle and Plato running around. You then got the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta. You've got the birth of democracy. It's all going off.
Yeah, and that's everything I was anticipating before this.
Well, this is the thing. I'm actually pretty happy that not only did we do a fair sort of geographical slice of Greece, but that we actually covered most of the sort of different eras of history pretty well. So don't just expect, of course, there's going to be lots of great classical era Greek stuff, but we're also going into the medieval period. We're talking sort of Crusader fortresses and all the Byzantine stuff, and then into the Venetian, and as well going back and doing a fairly sizable chunk of Mycenaean stuff as well. Oh my goodness, let's just get into it. There's giving loads of comments like, oh yeah, actual episode starts in 10 minutes. So we flew into Athens. It's a pretty good place to start, not least because there's lots of sort of fairly inexpensive flights there all the time.
Yes.
But, I mean, how could you not? The city of Athens is amazing, and it's actually very user-friendly on foot. Apparently the centre is kind of a bit of a nightmare to drive. We didn't really try this ourselves, but you've got the 3 metro lines kind of coming in, which are, again, fairly easy to navigate. But one of the main reasons that you know that the Athens metro is trustworthy is it has this prohibition on Crocs. In fairness, looking at that appears to have been stuck on, so I don't know if that's on the level or not. So, yeah, unsurprisingly, the first night we didn't do a lot. We dropped our bags at the Airbnb, which had this amazing view of the Parthenon.
Yes, that's something else.
And it really wasn't expensive. I mean, this was in October, so okay, you got slightly less demand, but this is right smack in the centre of Athens.
Yeah.
And just by virtue of being 5 floors up, unbelievable view. Like,
yeah, we were lucky. I was not expecting that.
So that first night, we mainly just had dinner and a few drinks and hung out with some cats.
Very pleasant. Yeah, clean and tidy cats. There must be some charity responsible for, what was it, trap and neuter, or I can't remember, and return. TNR? I can't.
Trap and return.
It's not cruel.
Just an endless cycle of trapping cats and then returning them to the streets again. It's a cycle of homelessness.
Yeah, that would be strange.
But yeah, kudos. So, went to bed the first night, got up next morning to just all the rain.
Oh yes, that was the unfortunate thing.
And look, this is where I've got to. I think I mentioned up top that I'm going to be splicing this with a bit of footage.
Oh yeah.
As you might have gathered if you watched the previous 4 Crete episodes, right after that, Jen and I turned up in Athens. And right about the time that Athens and Greece in general set a heat record.
Yeah.
It was something like 46 degrees, like a few kilometres north of Athens.
When was that?
So this was summer of 2021.
Oh, okay.
It's a long story. Watch the Crete episodes, I'll explain it a bit better there. And so we, the rest of that trip, where we also went into the Peloponnese and saw some stuff, was kind of defined by this like baking heat. And because everyone was running their AC on full, it meant that there was some rolling blackouts throughout the country because the power grid was just being wrecked.
Oh, that's not what you want.
And then there was wildfires. That was, again, thankfully those kicked off just the day after we'd actually got the bus out of Athens. So this was our context for summer 2021. And then Sean and Callum and I actually feel really bad. I didn't reference Callum up top. He's not here in the booth, but he
exists.
Yeah, he was on this trip, and he does all this production stuff for the tracks we make. Absolute linchpin of the collective. We love you, Callum.
Good man.
So we're in Athens and then exploring the Peloponnese, and instead, not record breaking, but Athens is just flooded, and it was crazy when they were in there in the summer. You could literally flick through and like something like 15 TV channels, and every single one was just plumes of smoke and flames, and Greek reporters standing really close to the fire.
Yeah, I recall that.
It's like, lady, get out of the way! There are fire crews working around you. Yeah, we get it. There's smoke. Like, we believe you.
Wow, that's commitment.
It's like that. You're being too intrepid with the reporting. But then
I want to be really, really at the scene of the fire.
like, you could be at half a kilometre back and you'll still see the smoke. It'll still be there. But then when we were there in October, we're flicking through all the TV channels and there's just like biblical flooding.
Yeah, that is just crazy.
This shot particularly cracks me up. You see this, like, how's this guy driving? Look, the water's run up to his wheel arches, and then just like perfect comic timing, these guys enter from camera right, and it's like, yeah, I see that, he's being pushed.
I mean, when we went to the Acropolis, we just braved it. We just thought, we are going to get soaked, so let's just wear what we're going to wear, knowing that we're going to get soaked. So I just had shorts and t-shirt, and got plastered, of course.
We did have a small respite from the rain at about 8 o'clock in the morning. We had been intending to go to the Parthenon pretty early, because, you know, normally you got to fight with these big crowds if you're there anything later than like when the gates open. But to be honest, it was like, oh, this kind of rain, I don't think we're gonna have much competition. So now this is where the Parthenon, there's loads of different parts to it, and we've already filled up the front half of this episode with all the prefacing, so I'm not going to go super in-depth to all the things, but put it this way, the Acropolis of Athens is not just Parthenon plonked on a rock. There's a whole bunch of different structures there. The first one you see on the way up is the Theatre of Herodes Atticus, which is actually a Roman structure. What I'm going to do, look, it's so easy to get the dates or some of the details wrong when you're just here in the booth, and we're not going to get another chance to come in and record the audio of this, so whenever it comes to dates, I am simply just going to put them in text in the lower third, that way I can do them in the edit, and I don't have to sort of cut around them. So that's the sort of theatre you kind of see on the slope up. Then the Propylaea comes into view. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. It's kind of the big monumental gateway to the top of the Acropolis. And you can just on the right, for example, that's the Athena Nike temple. You can see it's been quite heavily restored. So, of course, as you go through the Propylaea, you see the Parthenon itself, the main event, still covered in scaffolding.
Yeah, I thought you were going to mention that. That's a bugbear of Dave's.
And, well, look, you know, obviously these sites need preserving and they need work done. So look, I always feel a bit childish, like grousing. But it's mainly, to be honest, as like, you know, to someone who's taking pictures or video. It's just like,
yeah, I know what you mean.
As someone dryly noted, it took them about 9 years to build the Parthenon, but they've been restoring it since the 1970s.
Really?
Yeah. The end is in sight. There's supposed to be sort of like, I think there's like a funding push, and they are trying to get it sort of like the main sort of phase of restoration
what's
finished by
left to be done?
2025. Well, funny enough, actually, one of the main reasons it's taking so long is that previous restorations had not used very good materials, so they'd used like these sort of iron I don't know what you call them, clips. So yeah, they'd use these like iron clips to sort of hold the blocks together, and then as those rust, they expand, and as they expand, they crack the stone.
Oh, that's no good.
So that's a bad thing. So they're actually having to unpick the work of previous, like early 20th century restorations. In fairness, there's actually quite a lot of controversy at the moment because they've recently poured concrete on the site.
What? Where?
Well, we walked on it. So it can't have been that bad.
I didn't notice that. I thought it was ancient Greek concrete.
And so that was kind of controversial. There also, as well, you can now actually see, when you look at it from the north, there's an elevator on the sort of exterior of the Acropolis.
I think I did make that out, yeah.
And look, it's slightly an eyesore, but it is, significant to give proper sort of wheelchair access to the site. So yeah, like that's something that needs to be there. We need some sort of wheelchair access.
Yep.
Pretty unsightly way to solve that particular problem, but I'm not a structural engineer. Like it's not an easy fix. So yeah, look, people. It's kind of often been pointed out. People will just argue forever about the exact right thing you should and shouldn't be doing with the Acropolis.
But how very fitting for Athens argument.
It should be pointed out that like with the whole concrete thing, so like, oh how terrible. There's like apparently there used to be something like 150 broken legs a year.
Oh.
And we were there when it was raining. It's just a whole hilltop of jagged rocks.
Yeah. Okay.
And so you can sort of see it just you don't have to be just one small lapse in attention, especially on a wet day, and you're gonna be bleeding all over the Acropolis. So again, I can see the good sense. You've got like thousands of people going through there every day. It does sort of need a proper walkway. I'm painting a target on my forehead, aren't I? When are we ever not? When can you ever say anything on the internet without the inverse being shouted at you in all caps in the comments? Anyway, the main other structure you want to see while you're up there is the Erechtheion. Don't forget about that. It's like the other main sort of temple that still survives at a pretty impressive height just across from the Parthenon, and that's got the caryatid porch with these sort of famous sort of sculptures, and you can get and of course just the height you're at, you also get this great view over the city of Athens, which the metropolitan area of Athens just stretches on for
it's enormous,
so many miles. And it's worth pointing out at this point, a lot of the heritage that's scattered around the centre of Athens are sort of divided into these archaeological parks. So, for example, if you peek down the southern slope of the Acropolis, you can see a much smaller sort of theatre. This is different to the Theatre of Herodes Atticus, which we mentioned already, and some other ruins. So that's a little archaeological park down there, which is a separate ticket. You can get these all on a combined ticket. Again, this is good. Just keeping track of all these. The summer when we were there, we went into some of these. To be honest, some of them, like for example, the Library of Hadrian and also like the Roman Agora, there's some pretty good stuff to see there, but you can genuinely see all of it from the fence line. You can walk around at least 3 sides of these sites, and since there's something like, I don't remember the cost, something like 7 or 8 euros in each, the fact that you can just stand at the fence and see just everything right there, nothing is hidden.
Yeah, it all adds up on a trip with Dave, all these ticket prices.
Oh, it does start to. So yeah, if you've got the combined ticket, of course, I think the Roman Agora particularly suffers from this. It's like you don't actually need to go through the gate unless there's like a particular Insta shot that you're trying to get. Whatever, man. So there's all of those. I'm just looking down. We need to kind of cut this down a little bit. I'm sure a lot of this I'm going to cut out in the edit anyway. You'll see from the Acropolis, there's also the Temple of the Olympian Zeus, which at the moment mainly, again, just looks like a bunch of really impressive Corinthian columns covered in scaffolding. So I'm waiting for that to come down so I can get a decent shot. Just right by there is the Arch of Hadrian. That's really bagging. The city is full of quite ancient Byzantine churches, hovering at around 1,000 years old. So in the summer, I was kind of just like running around in the heat, very ill-advisedly, I should point out, just photographing and filming all these Byzantine churches. So that's something else you can do. There's some that I'm just drawing a complete blank, so instead, future me is just going to put those in the lower third, and you can enjoy the footage of those as I continue to talk. Again, for our October trip, this is where the rain really started to come down. So Athens does also have amazing coffee, which we were taking full advantage of because there wasn't much else we could do.
Hiding with coffee.
So we got a spot of breakfast and sat down under a canopy just watching the rain just absolutely pouring down.
Yeah. Eventually we hid out in a little coffee shop, a delightful coffee shop under a canopy, but we were adjacent to this road on an incline, which literally did define, fit the definition of a river at one point. I think not a cobble on this road was peeking over the surface of the water running down it. Is impossible to overestimate the torrential rain there.
It did get to the point where there was not a single dry spot on which to put your foot. Eventually, there was just enough of a gap in the rain for us to get to the Parthenon Museum. Now, by the way, I should just point out, I had made a mistake with this. There are a ton of museums in Athens. I've, again, got this big to-do list of things I still need to go see, mainly museums in Athens. I got a little confused. So there's this huge, very modern museum right next to the Parthenon, and I was like, yes, I'm finally going to see this. One of the things I've been itching to see is this particular Mycenaean death mask.
Oh, yeah.
Which is
later.
I was like, I really want to see this. And the more I wandered around the museum, I was like, it's funny, I know everyone said it was in the Athens Archaeological Museum. Turns out, the Athens Archaeological Museum is another museum entirely.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, Athens is so overflowing with amazing heritage, they could absolutely pack this incredible sort of modern cube right next to the Parthenon with just like the Parthenon stuff, and then a little ways across town, just have another amazing museum full of more incredible stuff. I think more or less pulled from sort of like around Greece. But yeah, the Parthenon Museum is still really great to see. If nothing else, it's actually quite clever. They're using the museum as a big cover for this sort of mixed era settlement underneath that's mainly kind of like Roman and Byzantine layers of just domestic structures. So those are really good to see underneath. I think that's one of those things that unless you know it's there, that would be quite easy to miss when you took to Athens.
Yeah, indeed.
The rain did actually slacken off by the evening, so the last thing we got to do that day was go up Philopapou Hill, which has the Philopapou monument up the top, and again, just beautiful views of Athens at night.
That was a good place to be in the evening.
Definitely want to get up there. It's quite a good place for sunset as well. We've done that in previous trips. So look, that's Athens. As you can see, that's already eaten up a ton of our run time, but of course it has. There is just so much history to see there. Anyway, so the rain had kind of sabotaged a lot of the stuff I was hoping to do, but we'd made a fairly good job of it. Now, the annoying thing is, to get out of Athens, post-2008, what Greek sort of train network there used to be was pretty much mothballed.
Right.
So Greece is now pretty much entirely navigable by buses, with a few exceptions.
Right.
However, the sort of out-of-town K-Tel station for Athens is in this really difficult place, and it's a baffling design because, again, it's equidistant between two metro stations. It's about 20 minutes from each, and the path you have to take there is this weird, it's nothing but kind of like scrap yards and sort of barbed wire and like all these sort of gates of warnings about like beware of the dog. It really does look like the sort of part of town you kind of go in a film to have some kind of like...
Yeah, it's strange for I mean, tourists are obviously going to be directed. They're obviously going to want to make their way there, and it's just I mean, I guess it's for taxi really. We did it. We marched there.
Yeah, we tried. The hope was we were like, right, we're aiming for this metro and we'll try and get a taxi, but there weren't any, and we were on the clock, so we're like, right, well, we've just got to go. You get to the bus, and it's probably sort of like Blade Runner dystopian interior. It's quite dark and stuffy inside and really grubby. And like, I think I've mentioned this detail before, but in brief, all the different sort of regions of Greece have their own like K-Tel franchise, and they are not centralized.
Oh, you did mention this.
So even though you see K-Tel on all the buses, they're actually technically different companies. And there's not even one unified ticket desk that will sell you a ticket. Like for any region, they shoo you away to go off to your own specific region's franchise ticket desk. The one for the Argolid is like tucked away right in the corner. It's very hard to navigate. It's only because I'd done this a couple of times before that I knew where to look.
Wow.
Anyway, that's the bus station. It's just this whole like grubby kind of like mess. We got on the bus to Corinth. Like I said, the centre of Athens, you don't really want to be driving it. That's like the one thing you don't. It's really not made for it. You'll just be waiting for ages, and it's pretty hair-raising.
Yeah.
So we made a point of not getting the hire car until we got to the Isthmus of Corinth.
That was a good idea.
We did just briefly have a chance to see the Corinth Canal, which was nice to see. Every time I've seen that so far, like the coach has gone over, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's the Corinth Canal, and then it's gone in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, oh, damn it!
Blink, you'll miss it. Yeah. It's, tiny.
This happened in the summer trip, but while we were actually taking the same bus route, funny enough. While we were kind of driving out that way, I looked in front. There was a bit of a commotion, and there was a praying mantis just on the window. And bear in mind, this is about this slightly like longer than my middle finger. Like this thing is big.
Yeah.
And I think when we got to the Corinth stop, an older lady just very casually just got out a Kleenex and just squished it against the window like it was a tiny moth, and just balled the tissue up and just dropped it in a bin outside the bus. And I was just like, whoa, lady, you are braver than I would not want to squish. That's like a handful of bug. It's like, oh, it was kind of grim.
Wow, yeah.
So I say we picked up the hire car in Corinth, just from the bus station there, and we drove to the first of what was going to be a series of unbelievable castles for this trip. So this, you can see, is Acrocorinth, and I've kind of joked about this before. As you're driving, like I say, on the main road to the Argolid, you see this huge castle set on top of basically a mountain, and it's like, oh my goodness, what is that? That's amazing.
Well, as you said, Venetians like to build castles in awkward places.
They really just, all the high spots, like, right, there's the highest, most inconvenient spot. Let's do it, guys. Come on, let's go. In fairness, Acrocorinth was occupied in antiquity as well, so there had been some stuff like that. I think there was a Crusader castle there previously. But the funny thing, and I've talked before about bus window roulette, but every time, I swear they did this deliberately, every time you feel like you've got a gap in the trees, like, oh, I'm going to get this good, like, real nice wide shot of Acrocorinth, the trees are like, ah, gotcha, you thought you had a gap in the trees, but no. Okay, go on, guys, give them a chance. Here's another gap in the trees. There you go, take your best shot. Go on, that's fine, no, go ahead. I got you again. Just for the next 10, 15 minutes. Like, every time you think you've got enough of a gap in the foliage to get a decent wide shot. So it was with a degree of satisfaction that we finally got to drive up to this place. But as you can see from the dark clouds, it was looking hella ominous. We could actually see the rain kind of coming down just off the coast of Corinth. The other thing I didn't realise was that the castle was actually free and unmanned.
Yes.
There was a ticket office there, but it was just like, yeah, it's free, just come on in. Which I'd not anticipated. I was actually saying to the guys, look, let's just park up here quickly, again, because the weather's not looking that great. We'll just get a few shots of this, and we'll come back into this properly later in the week when we're coming back round this way. So I wasn't really prepared for this. I sort of panicked and was like, oh my goodness, the bridge is down! Get in the castle, quick! So we kind of walked around and got again, it's a huge site.
I mean, it's enormous. In that weather, actually, it arguably is a bit of a risk factor on those cobbles and those smooth stones.
It is kind of. It's pretty steep. We were saving the rest of the sort of ancient Corinth stuff for the final day, but Acrocorinth played a sort of final prank on us, and I swear, 5 or 6 minutes after we had driven down the slope and the rain had just subsided, suddenly from behind the Acropolis, gorgeous blue skies, sunshine drenching the castle, and it was like, hey guys, aren't you gonna look at the gorgeous weather? Why aren't you coming and looking at it? It was like, so yeah.
I cannot have it all.
But anyway, we had to get moving. We were running a little bit late at that point. And sure enough, after a admittedly very beautiful drive kind of into the Peloponnese, by the time we sort of stopped off at a truck stop kind of midway down, once again it was absolutely pelting it down with rain, so you just couldn't win. So at this point, we'd driven quite far down the Peloponnese, but the highways there are pretty good, so it didn't take particularly long. And we were now at Sparta, or as someone is bound to jump in the comments, the modern city is called Sparti. It's like, yeah,
oh well.
Great.
It doesn't sound as good when you say this is Sparti. And you can't really kick someone down a hole emphatically with that kind of motto.
Absolutely not. So look, everyone's calling it Sparta. Pipe down. Whatever. So this is actually where the rain was getting a little bit problematic, because already, we've got 5 days to do this, and we'd been sort of shunting stuff around, and it'd been a bit like, we'll wait till the rain stops, and we'd sort of made the best of it. But now this was actually becoming a problem. We only had one night that we were staying in Sparta, and the first thing we did, we made a beeline for Mistras. Now, Mistras is this utterly amazing site that, to be honest, most people who aren't Byzantine enthusiasts probably don't know about. It's only like sort of 10 miles from Sparta, but while everyone has heard of Sparta, in antiquity, most people don't know about Mistras, even though its place in history is incredibly significant. Now, we'll get there in a bit, but this afternoon in specific, we'd sort of driven there to make sure we were there before it closed, but the rain was back and it was not letting up.
No, alas.
And so I tried getting a few shots, but it was like, no, this is not happening. And it was too important a site, so we're like, we'll just try and, I guess, crowbar this into tomorrow morning. I quickly ducked into the Sparta Museum before it closed, which is pretty small. It has a reasonable collection, but, compared to all the stuff you can see in Athens, there's not a tremendous amount on display here. And we went and sat in the cafe. I got a bit depressed at this point because the rain was really cutting into, then we weren't going to get a second chance to do all of this stuff.
It was a hard job to cheer Dave up at that moment.
Yeah, and we'd driven not an inconsiderable distance. It is a mish getting down there. You need a hire car, really. You can do it by buses, but it's very complicated. So yeah, I was a little down. The weather had let up a little bit, so we went to see the Menelaean. This is just outside the town on a hill overlooking Sparta. And it's from around the sort of 500 BC, although there might have been a slightly earlier structure there. Yeah. And it's a temple to the memory of Menelaus, famous from the Homeric epics.
Yeah. But he wasn't a god, though. He was just Helen's original boyfriend, wasn't he?
He was kind of a douche husband. And
husband, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's not someone you. Well, again, I'm just superimposing my modern sort of 21st century narrative on that. This is the worst historical thing you can do. But still, yeah, there was a temple to celebrate him.
Nice.
Slightly embarrassingly, just jumping ahead. There's a little bit of a Mycenaean site there, which first time round I completely missed because it's just kind of tucked just behind a bank, and so if you don't know exactly where to look, you just do not see it.
Yes.
Anyway, got some really nice sort of moody shots of the town and the mountains in the distance. We also just briefly went to a small site, the Sanctuary of Artemis Orthia. Now, I did not know this at the time. This is only something I discovered much later. But we were actually very lucky with this. So if you check out the Google reviews, this isn't just an isolated incident or just a couple of times. It appears there's a traveller community living right next to this site, which was padlocked when we were there anyway. And there's just numerous accounts of people being attacked, having stones thrown at them, being straight up mugged. And again, this is not an isolated incident.
Were you aware of this at the time?
No, not at all.
No. Wow.
So, we heard this dog barking constantly while we were there, but it turns out we had a lucky miss.
Wow.
And can I just underline, this is so unlike Greece. Whenever you're in a European country, you're always like, is it safe? What's going on? Greece is just so super safe. I've been there, come to numerous places, numerous times, and not once, whether you're in the inner city or out in the country, have we really felt anything but completely at home and welcomed and safe. And so it's actually really strange to find an area where people are for real, you're really taking your life in your hands, don't go there. It's really sad. We dropped our stuff to the Airbnb, which was fine. I briefly popped out just to see the statue of Leonidas. It's not ancient or anything, it's just, you've got got to see it while you're there. And, you know, we got some dinner. I was pretty dejected. And that's actually where we're going to park the first half, with this sort of suspenseful kind of like, oh, what's coming next? I am quite sure that in the edit, I've already flashed up enough kind of chunks of footage to spoiler the next. It's like, oh, will they see Mistras in time? It's like, well, yeah, they clearly will, because I've seen a bunch of pictures of it like, in the sunshine. So it's like, yeah, okay, but pretend you're just totally held in suspense right now. And just to keep these even vaguely manageable, we will catch you guys on the part 2, so check back for that. And I say, do look through the playlist as well for the Crete episodes and the Ionian Islands. We'll catch you very soon.
Splendid. Goodbye.